Lit podcast. My name is
Yes.
Jenny, and I have a very special guest today. Welcome, Gena,
Hi, Jenny.
to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
My pleasure. I'm so happy that you're here and we get
Yes,
to
me
meet in
too.
person.
Yes.
You
Yes.
are a Miami native,
Ye-
right?
yes. Well, technically, I was born in Gainesville,
Mm-hmm.
but I grew up in Miami. So basically, I'm a Miami native. I grew up here since I was 3 years old.
Yeah, you're definitely a native. I think that
hmm
qualifies you. What do you think about all the changes that have been happening in the city? All the
Um,
growth.
well, the first thing I thought of was COVID. No, you're talking about growth.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Um,
no, whatever that means to you.
well, I feel like the city has done a nice job of keeping its integrity of what it's about
Yeah,
amidst all of the craziness.
that's true.
Yeah, I feel like people are pretty grounded here. I don't feel like anything is all that extreme in terms of people's views. People just seem pretty grounded. Um, I feel like there's a nice amount of freedom here, while of course people being safe with COVID and everything. Um, yeah, and in terms of the growth, the population growth, because I grew up here so young, I didn't really notice it for most of my life. But I love hearing stories from people like Uber drivers about how there's all these different ethnicities and different cultures who come to Miami, like the Russians and Colombians and Venezuelans, unfortunately, because of the situation over there. But
Right.
fortunately, in the sense that I love how there's so many cultures here, and it all just kind of forms one culture, and at the same time, every culture is very unique and maintains its integrity at the same time. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's you put it so eloquently. I totally agree. It's so interesting how
hmm
it's like a mosh, a mix and match of everything, but everyone has been able to keep their culture going and alive.
hmm
That's yeah, I love the way you put that.
Oh, thanks.
Um, you are the founder of the Autism Theater Project,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is such an amazing organization.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So before we dive into that, I want to talk about how you found acting yourself.
Okay. I'm not sure how much to talk to you and how much to talk to you, but I'll talk to
Whatever
both
you
of you.
want.
Yeah. Okay, how I found acting. Well, I found performing first. I found singing and dancing first when I was very little, when I was 3 years old. And my first performance was a ballet performance. And apparently I had a very dramatic bow,
Oh.
trying to take up the attention. So I guess that was the beginning of that. Um, and then fast forward until I was about 10, I did the Actors Playhouse summer camp, and they had singing, dancing, and acting. And I sang my first solo in an acting role as a camel in a fable that we were doing. We were doing a show called Wheel of Fables, and I was playing the camel, and I sang "My Humps" by
No way.
yes,
I love that. That's amazing. By the
it was
Black Eyed
awesome.
Peas.
Yes, that's who it is.
I,
Yeah,
I love that
yeah.
song. I remember that song.
Yes, and also sang "I'm a Survivor" by Destiny's Child. Um, and that was very fun as a camel. So that was the beginning of that, yeah. And then I think I really started to take it seriously my third year of middle school in eighth grade when I played the lead role in a play called Mother Hicks. And Mother Hicks was basically about this woman who's an outsider. It was set during the Great Depression in the 30s. And Mother Hicks was this woman who was an outsider because she was a witch doctor and people didn't trust her. And they actually blamed Mother Hicks for the death of these babies and these negative things going on. So it was a dark play for a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds. But I had this really awesome moment playing Mother Hicks when I was on stage, and I just felt the audience like feel Mother Hicks and her story and understand her. It was a very cool moment, and I was like, wow, I love the idea that you can make everybody feel something at the same time without really manipulating them or forcing them, just by telling a story and presenting something true about human nature, the fact everybody has a perspective, and I think most people are coming from a good place usually. Just by presenting that truth, the audience could feel it, and I love that.
That's so cool. So that was like when you knew this is something I want to do
That's why I knew, yeah.
professionally.
Mhm.
Wow. That's so that must have been such a cool experience because
Mhm.
most of us at that age have no idea what we want to do. So the fact that you already had that must have been cool.
Yes, it helped me, and it helped me get through that awkward teenage phase because I had something to focus on that would drive me to keep going. And um, if I threw doubts or certain changes in my life, like that was the one constant thing. So I like that. Well, not the one constant thing. I had I had a pretty blessed childhood, so it's not like everything was changing, but it was the constant
Yeah.
thing, I would say.
It's tough
Yeah.
being a teenager, no matter how
Mhm.
great your life is. Like those changes are always difficult.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel
Mhm.
like no matter how awesome everything else is,
Mhm.
it just feels like the world is expanding and shrinking around you all at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, in personal ways and also in
Yeah,
just general ways. Yeah. Mhm.
right. Yeah, it's tough growing up.
Mhm.
Um, so you went to you're traditionally trained, right? At
Mhm.
Carnegie Mellon. How was
Mhm.
that experience?
That was a great experience in the sense of there was a lot of growth, a lot of learning. Um, anyone who's been to college in a program they thought was tough, you learn to tough things out. I learned to tough things out in the snow, which I wasn't used to. 'Cause Carnegie Mellon's in
That's
Pittsburgh. Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
I didn't think of that weather change.
Yeah, but I like the different seasons, but it's so much easier living in a warm climate that doesn't really change that much. Um, yeah, I loved how much I got to work, how much I got to delve into theater, storytelling, and I think the most meaningful moments I had at Carnegie Mellon were related to the Autism Theater Project. Um, I met this teacher there, her name's Barbara Mackenzie Wood, and Barbara is much older than I am. She's in her 70s, and she has a brother who she now knows has autism. But back like 65 years ago, when he was struggling with his speech and the
Mm.
autistic symptoms, people didn't know. So Barbara told our class, not knowing that my sister had autism, Barbara told our class about this story about how her brother was taken away when he was like 5 years old and she was like four. And she remembers when her brother was taken away to go to this mental institution. Barbara remembers saying, I can make him talk. And Barbara thinks that that drive to get people to express themselves is why she's an acting teacher. So I heard that story and I was like, wow, I can really connect with that. So I told her about my sister who has autism and the Autism Theater Project. And that led to us creating our first play at Carnegie Mellon. And also later on going on this trip to Italy, this theater conference in Italy, and me being able to bring a piece of the play and do this monologue from this as this mother of a child with autism. And that was a really cool experience, being able to connect with people in Europe who speak different languages and tell them this kind of this personal story and have them understand was really
Right.
cool. So yeah.
So by the time you met Barbara, the autism project was already brewing in your mind, or was it existed already?
Yes, it existed, but mainly as like a community service project my senior year of high school, and mainly as a series of classes for children with special needs, uh, drama-based classes. Yeah, but not we hadn't done any productions yet.
Wow. So that
Hmm.
was the first time that all of that came together.
Hmm.
How did that
Hmm.
feel?
Um, it was nerve-wracking because the play it was inspired by my sister, and in some ways my own life as well. So it was very personal. Um, and I didn't know how people were going to respond to it. So I was nervous, but I think it was the most driven I've ever felt to create something. And I get pretty excited about creating things. So I felt very, very driven. And it was really cool to be able to open up about my story and my sister's story with college students who were these really great actors and work with them to create this production. And another experience that was really nice associated with creating the life of a child was these interviews I did before I made this show. The show was called In the Life of a Child. I don't know if I said that yet, but yeah. And I did these interviews with people who are in the autism community, people who are parents, etc. Uh, and Barbara, my professor, had me meet her friend whose son had autism, and their son was 18 years old at the time. And I got to go and talk to her and interview her. And then because she lived in Pittsburgh, she got to come see the show, and she was very moved by it. And that was just a very cool experience to see that this,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, to see that what felt like an unusual topic, because I feel like it's not talked about much in frank terms, autism. This very personal story that I felt in some ways, not just having to do with my sister's autism, but just other things in my life, felt very unique to me. I felt kind of isolated in the situation when I was in high school. To see how it was resonating with people was really cool.
That must
Yeah.
have been powerful.
It
Yeah.
was really cool. Yeah.
That's amazing. Did you ever have not doubts, but were you ever concerned about putting a production like that? Did you ever have any fears?
Yes, I was afraid the tone of it wouldn't be quite right. Um,
I see.
you see, the tone of our productions is very family friendly, the kind of thing you probably want to show to kids, but also something adults would get a lot out of. Kind of sort of similar to those classic Pixar animated
Mm,
films, those classic Disney films, but in some ways a little bit more adult than that. And I wasn't sure if people were going to think it's childish, or if they were going to think it's too abstract, because what we did with the play is we basically went inside the autistic child's dream world. And this autistic child, named Olivia, after my sister, in the play she's nonverbal, and she dreams of a world where the children on the playground could hear the voice inside her head. And Olivia then tells her story in a way, but the her life story is shown mainly through dance and music. So it's abstract, so I was like, I want to make sure people actually get it. I don't want it to go over their heads, or just bore them. So
right.
those were my fears associated with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how all of that can come into play when, no pun intended,
Mhm.
when you're putting on something like that with a topic that can be so heavy,
Mhm.
but you want it to, like you said, you want people to be able to connect and get everything out of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's that must have been quite a journey for you to go through.
Mhm. Mhm. But it was really great. It was very rewarding.
Yeah,
I think it was the best thing I think I got out of my experience at Carnegie Mellon.
right.
Mhm.
And then you came back to Miami after your college years?
After graduating,
Yeah.
yeah, I did. I came back to Miami. I did go to Washington D.C. to do this acting competition, and I won that, which was a really cool experience. And I met people there who have been really supportive of my work since then, and supportive of the Autism Theater Project. So that was nice. So, but yes, I came back, but not for long. I then in the fall did a show in New York. I did a musical in New York.
So how do
Um,
you balance like your acting with the organization and everything that it takes, because you guys produce the plays, you take care of everything, right?
Right now, yes, we've been growing, so I've been having some more help. Um, it's been mainly me, um, but now it is changing. How do I balance it? Um, in a way, it kind of balances itself because it kind of depends on which part of my life I'm most active in at the moment.
Mm,
I have worked on film and doing films over the past couple of years. And there have been times where I've put some more of my attention into that and then gone back to the Autism Theater Project. But I feel really strongly right now that that's the Autism Theater Project and the web series that we're going to do, which we'll talk about later, is needs to be my main focus right now.
right.
Yeah.
So let's dive into that.
Okay.
For those of us that are not familiar with the Autism Theater Project, how would you describe it for them?
It's basically a part education, part entertainment, nonprofit organization. In a way, it's similar to the structure of many theater organizations in which they have classes and they also have productions. What's unique about our organization is that our classes are very much focused on more of a drama therapy type aspect of um, learning about the practicing theater in a way.
Right.
You know, it's focused mainly on helping children develop their social skills. In the case where we're working with children who struggle with speech, helping them develop that and express themselves, and teaching empathy, things like that. Um, yeah, and then there's our production side. We worked on In the Life of a Child, like I talked about, and we then brought that to Miami Children's Theater and Actors Playhouse after doing it at Carnegie Mellon. Um, and we have plans to have a tour of that at some point. Because of the pandemic, the my focus on theater, live theater, shifted just kind of naturally, both as an actor and as the the director of the Autism Theater Project. So we shifted towards film and
Right.
making this web series. Yeah.
But that's so cool that you guys are so focused on live theater because I don't want to call it a dying art, but it feels like less and less people show up to theater productions,
Yes.
unfortunately. And there's
Yes.
just so much that happens when you're witnessing art right in front of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not across the screen. It's there and you can participate and feel it and connect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the fact that you are doing that with the education component is just so amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely something special about being able to connect to an audience or connect to actors in a theater setting. It's like seeing a concert versus seeing a music video,
Yes,
two very different
exactly.
things. Yeah. Um, but what excites me about this film medium is that you can just reach out to so many more people
Right.
um, much more easily. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean, you can argue against that. The convenience
Mhm.
of just being able to reach out endless numbers of people.
Mhm.
Um but I'm excited about the life aspect too. Okay, I feel
Mhm.
like those two are just magic together.
Okay, awesome.
Would you say has been the most memorable experience so far through the organization?
Um, the one that stands out in my mind is when we did a production of In the Life of a Child at Actors Playhouse, and we did it for a bunch of children, like mostly 7 to 15. Uh, and it's just short play, like 30, 35 minutes. But then after the play, I just had such a strong sense that they really got it. They understood it. Um, they really enjoyed it, but they were also moved by it. And then we had a talk back, and some of the children were talking about how they have autistic siblings, and a child actually said, "Oh, this play makes me see that we're all the same. We're all one and the same," and that was cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
awesome. And it was really awesome, especially because the way I produce the play, each production has been a little bit unique because with the dance aspect of it, the movement aspect of it, I work with the actors I have. So I allow them to really collaborate, put in their own ideas, you know. So it was cool because the actors I was on stage with, they felt like it was theirs too, especially the ones who were like my assistant directors. And they were also very young, like 8, 17, 18. So it was just cool to feel like
Yeah.
we did it and it worked. We made it work after, all the highs and lows that come with trying to
Right.
make something happen.
That must have been empowering for them. And
Mhm.
yeah, at such a young age to like have that, that claim, like I was part of this.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's so cool. What would you say is the biggest challenge that you've all faced so far?
Um, I mean, there's the boring challenges like logistics, you know. That's just kind of boring. Something more interesting. Um, there's there's the emotional aspect of it, like we talked about, me being very personal, and especially lately when I've been working more with people who have autism and telling their stories as opposed to telling my own, like and my sisters,
Mm,
like I did with In Life of a Child. Uh, trying to do justice to the stories that they're telling me about. And really, the biggest challenge really is the logistics
yeah,
of just trying to build a name. Sometimes you have to reach out to someone and not hear from them, but then you hear from them like 8 months later, and then like
right.
and then patience, being
Yeah,
patient. That's a challenge because
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I can relate.
hmm
Yeah, it's tough. Especially with something like this that really takes time
hmm
to and it takes so much effort because it's a lot of
hmm
work, I imagine.
It is. I mean, it's fun for me. Yeah, performing, writing, all that kind of thing. For me is really fun. I feel like we're kind of hanging out, partying. Now, actually scheduling it and putting it together, that's a lot of work. Fundraising, that's a lot of work.
Right.
But the actual doing of it is really fun. Um, it's also hard because it's what we do is very different. We Well, we're doing plays and movies about autism, and that's been done before. Our perspective on it is different because we're very much so coming from the perspective of the autistic
Mhm.
person, um, in a way that's a little unusual. And also, we're not limiting ourselves to, I guess, more advanced forms of autism. Have you seen the movie Rain Man?
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, he had a form of autism where yes, he had certain symptoms that were really made him struggle,
Mhm.
but he was the genius, the autistic genius. Um, and while we're working with people who do have unique talents, we're delving more into different types of autism, different struggles people with autism might have, and also different strengths they might have.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's different. So it's very new.
Mhm.
It's kind of hard to push something out that's new, but it's also
Yeah.
exciting. So.
That you bring up a good point because I I'm sure for a lot of people when they think autism, they think of Rain Man
Mhm.
and maybe only that aspect of it, but it's
Mhm.
such a wide spectrum.
Mhm.
So the fact that you're trying to showcase different aspects of it, I think is so important so that people can
Mhm.
really see.
Mhm. That's what we're hoping to do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Make
for
our best.
sure. Let's talk about the Voice Inside series.
Yes.
That that looks incredible. I
Oh,
saw
thank
some of
you.
it.
Mhm.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. Yes. So basically, what we're doing is we are interviewing people who have mainly people who have disabilities, who are young adults, who are like around my age, in their 20s. and we're interviewing them about how they overcame challenges as teens. And what we're trying to show with the series is how basically how a child can go from being diagnosed and maybe told that they were never really going to speak to becoming a professional speaker when they're 27. You know, it's those kinds of
Oh,
stories.
that's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool. I'm glad you think so. So I've been finding these stories, and I guess the universe is just kind of throwing me these different people, because I don't feel like we are short on stories, and I don't feel like we're going to be short on stories. Um, I just keep running into people who have the autism diagnosis, and while they now seem like they may not be struggling with it that much, there was a time when they were nonverbal,
Mm.
or there was a time, for example, there's the main story we're working on with right now is about someone who was in high school for 7 years in the special education program and had to go to a psychiatric hospital because of emotional struggles he was having associated with his autism, and was told, you know, he's never going to go to college or accomplish these things because of his struggles.
Yeah.
um, and then he just found a way to get an official high school diploma as opposed to the special ed certificate. And now he's becoming a playwright, starting to get some professional work, you know, while he's still in college, and willing to take as long as he needs to take to finish it. Because uh, while, yes, people can overcome the symptoms of autism, it's still, as far as I know, it's not something that necessarily goes away.
Mhm.
So he understands that it might not take him 4 years to finish college. He might be in there for a long time, but he still is already starting to work professionally, already just continuing to go because he has that drive. So what we really wanna do is teach teenagers with and without disabilities about having that drive to overcome obstacles. Um, yeah.
That's I mean, even adults need that. I feel like sometimes I need that.
Me too. Sometimes me
Yeah,
too. Like, I meet with these people and I'm like, "Oh,
right.
wow, I should step up." Yeah. That's
Yeah.
how I feel, yeah.
Because I mean, to think just everyday struggles and then to add that layer that people with disabilities or other struggles deal with,
Mhm.
and to see them just shine, it's so amazing. How
Mhm.
would you say you deal with your personal struggles?
I try to keep moving.
Mm.
Um, that's something I think I do pretty consistently. If I feel like I'm about to give up or I'm about to listen to my own self-doubts or the doubts of other people, I try to become really aware of that and just keep moving.
Right.
Um,
What would you say drives you to keep moving?
um, just in general, the passion for life and the feeling like I need to contribute something.
Mm.
And in order for me to contribute something, I have to work, I have to keep moving, I have to get up, you know? So that there's that. I've been spending a lot of time with my sister since the pandemic. I started homeschooling my sister, my autistic sister. And I think being around her in a way is a reminder of the skills I was born with, you know, the ability to speak fluidly, the ability to not be bothered by, say, there's like an air vent.
Yeah.
My sister might hear the air vent and like not be able to focus on what you're saying, and it might look like she's not able to respond, but really she's caught up in the air vent. You know,
Yeah.
I don't have those issues. So I think that's kind of subconsciously been a drive for me. Like, oh, remember you have a lot of gifts that you didn't work for. You know, and
Hmm.
then that is why I feel like I have to put in the work in order to earn the gifts I've already been given, whether they're complex, whether they're just simple, like ability to
Yeah.
talk. You know.
Wow. That's pretty profound. And back to gratitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to be grateful for the gifts that, like you said, we did not earn.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's amazing. Um how would you say theater can be a transformative experience?
Um, I feel like when people go to the theater, they have an open mind. They might have more of an open heart than maybe usual. Um, they probably don't feel watched. I think they feel less self-conscious.
Mm.
Everybody's just focusing on what's going on stage, So I think that opens people up to connect more, to get a little more excited or laugh louder or cry, things that they may shy away from doing in real life. And I think that allows them to have a spiritual experience, to get closer to other people. And um, in my belief, if a play is really good, if a play is really effective, I guess I should say, in some ways makes you feel closer to God. That's been my
Yeah.
experience being on stage. And if I watch something that's really awesome, I just feel more spiritually enlightened. Um,
Yeah, it stays
yeah.
with you in a different way than something else might. Theater just has that special it factor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's hard to pinpoint as a viewer, right? Because
Hmm.
you would never see me on stage. They'll throw tomatoes.
Yeah. You're kind of on stage now.
Oh, don't say that. I'll freak
Oh,
out.
okay. Okay. Okay.
Oh my gosh, no, I'm kidding, but
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a completely different approach to how we connect with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel similarly about movies, concerts,
right.
especially movies in a movie theater.
Yes. Is
Yeah.
that one of the things you missed during the pandemic?
A little bit honestly, I haven't been as frequent of a goer to the theater. I was when I was a kid, but not as much. But it's kind of said that that's kind of dying a bit. The
It
idea of a
is.
full movie theater,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of dying. But no, I mean, it can come back.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
right? Because it's totally different to experience a movie with like a bunch of strangers that you have no
Mm-hmm.
idea who they are, but you're sitting there having this moment together.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're, enjoying yourselves, either laughing, crying, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to go on your way.
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
What advice do you have for parents who may have a child that's been diagnosed or a child that's interested in theater?
Mm-hmm. Um, I'll start with for parents who might have a child that's been diagnosed. I would say to keep the hope and the faith up without completely ignoring the doubts and the fears you may be feeling,
Mm,
which is not easy to do. Uh, Also, I'll just repeat advice from parents with autism I've talked to. Like my dad always says, God will never only throw you something that you can handle. He will never throw something at you that you can't handle. And I know somebody else who her name is Sandra Valencia, and she's a parent of a child with autism. Has worked with children with autism, and she said a similar thing. It takes a certain kind of strength. And my dad says to be a parent of a child with a disability, a parent of a child with autism, takes a lot of strength. So I'd say be proud of that, even if it's only been 2 days.
right.
Like you're still dealing with something that's tough, and when you deal with something that's tough, and you're moving forward still, then like be proud of that. I think that helps. Also, look at the little victories and count them. You know, it's easy and I think even a good idea to set big goals like we want our child to be in a mainstream middle school
Mhm.
by the time she's like 11 or 12. That's great. But even if for some reason that goal doesn't seem like it's going to happen by the time she gets to that age, like the little victories of say I don't know now she can sit at a table
Mhm.
for an hour at a restaurant and be happy the whole time and not
Right.
be overwhelmed. I mean that's a huge victory for quality of life,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so yeah, or
Yeah.
even smaller than that, like she's doing a little bit better with focusing on her schoolwork today than she did
Mhm.
yesterday. Just even if it's just a little bit, it's like okay, as long as we're moving,
There's
it's
progress. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
What about kids that are interested in entering the acting world?
For parents, the parents of
Yes,
us,
for parents. And for
I
the
would
kids
say,
too, because you've
mhm,
been doing it since you were a child yourself. So,
mhm.
what would you say to them?
I would say for the parents, I would say encourage them to think outside the box professionally, especially because things are changing so much in the industry. Um, Encourage them to find their passions and then make give them confidence that yes, you can make a living off of your passions. You might take a long time, you have to be patient. There might be a few months where you're doing just fine and then other months where nothing's really coming in from that passion. But if you believe and if you're willing to think outside the box and learn the business side of things, I believe you can create some kind of livelihood for yourself related to what it is that you want to do. But you have to do those things. And I think a lot of people might get trapped, especially coming out of school, if say they are having a long dry spell when it comes to getting traditional jobs, like the traditional way through an agent, or even if they get really lucky and then all of a sudden they have a long dry spell, they might feel like, oh, I'm just not good enough, or
Yeah.
it's just not meant to happen. It's like, no, maybe you're just supposed to do it a little bit differently for now, and then maybe later in life, you're gonna go back to doing the more traditional films and plays, as an actor. But it's you just have to go with the flow, but also direct the flow at the same time. It's kind of hard.
Yeah. Is that how you do it yourself? Is that how you handle those, like, that uncertainty?
Yes, yes. Um, Also, don't give up. It can feel like you've been doing this forever, especially if you started when you were a kid. I know people
Mm.
who started when they were like 5, 7, and by now the time you're 25 or 27, you can feel like you've been doing it forever. But really, especially if you weren't in the actual industry, but you were, say, training or something for a certain amount of time, it really hasn't been that long. You're not necessarily that old, even though it can in this industry, you can feel old sometimes, even if, like, you're
Right, you
in your
always
20s.
hear when you hit, like, what, 40, it's over or something like that?
Yeah, like, there's a lot of pressure, um, but yeah, to go back to your question, yeah, you have to keep the faith once again, you have to be prepared to go your own way. That's something that my dad has taught me, is how to be prepared to do your own thing and figure out how to make that work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it provides you with strength, right? Because
Mhm.
you have all these things to focus on
Mhm.
when you're going through those dry spells.
Mhm.
Yeah, that must be rough to deal with, especially for a younger person, like a somebody who's a teenager or in their early 20s.
Mhm. Um, I think it's rough if that's if specifically being hired to do a production and then performing in production feels like your only creative outlet, then that's very tough. Like,
Yeah.
I remember my senior year of college, I got lucky and we ended up doing these shows that I really enjoyed being in, you know, but I was very much addicted to that process of the live show. And honestly, the audience and the being able to just focus on a character and kind of forget everything else, to be honest. I was addicted to that. So when we were coming towards the end of the school year, I was kind of nervous because I kind of felt like, what am I gonna do without that? And then I got lucky and I was able to do the show off Broadway in New York, and I was addicted to that. And then and I came back here and I was able to. I actually started doing live music for quite a bit of time, but then everything shut down. I was like, oh wow, now there's there's actually nothing.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
so I had to adjust and I had to um face certain things with myself. Um, but then I started homeschooling my sister, which was, of course, a big passion. So that directed my passion. And then I started thinking about the Autism Theater Project and doing that, you know? So I guess I think a lot of actors can probably relate to the feeling of putting their worth into whether they're getting hired or they're getting the part or whether they're doing well or people like what they're doing. So step away, and whether you're having a part you're loving right now or not, just step away and be able to detach yourself from that and be like, I'm still a creative, productive, full person without that, you know?
Mm.
And that actually, I think it's that confidence that will help you create your own career, because you don't always need the approval of others, and you can handle the no's, you know?
That's such good advice. Yeah, I never thought of it like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sure that's
Nice.
going to help a lot of people to hear you say that.
I'm glad.
Um, how can people support the organization? How can they get involved?
Well, we are fundraising so that we can make these episodes of The Voice Inside. So you can donate. There's a donate button on the homepage of our website, autismtheaterproject.org. And that would be great. But you can also support us just by following our YouTube channel, where we're posting the interviews with the people who are inspiring this fictional web series that we are creating. Um, can join our email list. You can contact us via the website and share anything, any video that moves you, or just share the website. You know,
Yeah.
if you connect with what we're doing. Hmm.
Absolutely. And I mean, let's be honest, who wouldn't connect with what you're all doing? I just think it's so awesome. Well,
Hmm.
thank you so much, Gina,
Thank
for
you.
coming and for sharing with us. And we'll make sure to, like I said, provide all the links below. Make sure
Hmm.
everybody checks out the Autism Theater Project
Awesome.
and supports and becomes a part of it in the best way they see fit. And we look forward to seeing it grow and continuing to shed a light on this because it's so important.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
No,
so
my
much.
pleasure. And to everybody
Yeah.
listening and watching, as always, time is a top currency. Though, so the fact that you chose it to spend it with us means so much.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we wish you an amazing day and hope to see you next time.